all the money in the world was no match for the good people of Texas.
I'm so proud of you guys.
I will be out there fighting with you. I am not going away.
I applied for the job, but I got a rejection letter here.
I won't have the blessing of serving as the next governor of the state of Florida.
Mr. President, I look forward to working with you.
And I know that you've put your faith in me. And you'll do it again.
We are tough, we are resilient, and when the chips are down, we stick together.
The worst thing would be to not ever run at all.
We will never yield the hallowed ground of patriotism to the extremists at the State House and in the White House.
God bless our great country. Let's get to work.
Together we can organize around the politics of hope.
I commit to devote my heart, my mind, and my energy.
I'm back, and here I am.
I end this in a way that I've been filled up so much more by you.
We are just getting started.
If we are going to turn this ship around as a country, it is not good enough to throw a rock at our neighbor's yard. We need to clean up our own house.
Today is more than about Democrats and Republicans. It's about restoring the Constitution's checks and balances to the Trump administration.
The bottom line, Democrats are returning to power on Capitol Hill. They won control of the House, yet appear to have lost ground in the Senate. At last check, Democrats have gained 28 seats in the House. That amounts to an estimated 230-seat majority to the Republicans' 205, with Democrats powered by women winning from coast to coast. And while Democrats gained a Senate seat in Nevada, they fell short in several Trump voting states, with Beto O'Rourke, whose Senate campaign broke fundraising records, falling to Ted Cruz in Texas. And on the bubble, the Florida Senate race, too close to call. Three-term incumbent Senator Bill Nelson trailing Republican Governor Rick Scott at this hour. A heartbreaker for Democrats in that state, with the loss of Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum, whose surprise victory in the Democratic primary last August rocketed him to national stardom. Another top figure of this cycle, Georgia's Stacey Abrams, fights on in hopes of a runoff. However, it was a good night for Democrats, a very good night, flipping 7 governors' mansions around the country. More on that later. Overall, Democrats lost senators in Indiana, Missouri, North Dakota, and possibly more, with Montana too close to call. The president was relatively quiet, tweeting tremendous success tonight. Thank you to all.
Did he leave his address for the subpoenas to be delivered?
Well, they can just go to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Okay.
And
because, I mean, if that's a tremendous night, that the Democrats on Monday can say, we're going to subpoena your tax records, and on Tuesday, Donald Trump has to turn them over, then I think he's setting the bar a little low for himself.
It was a tremendous night.
Yeah.
And later, he tweeted his agreement with a quote that his position with Republicans improves because in his eyes, they own him. They owe him their political career. However, the president reached out to the Democrats leader in the House, Nancy Pelosi, to congratulate her.
Oh, that's good.
After watching her victory speech.
E pluribus unum, from many one. The founders could never have imagined how vast our country would become, how many we would be, how different we would be from each other. But they knew we had to be one. Unity. Unity for our country.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe, live from historic Studio 8H in Rockefeller Center. Along with Joe, Willie, and me, we have MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, national affairs analyst for NBC News and MSNBC, and co-host and executive producer of Showtime's The Circus, John Heilman, and NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent and host of KCDC on MSNBC, Casey Hunt. We've all been up all night, Willie.
Literally.
Nice job bringing us through the night. But wow, what a night, Joe.
What a night. You know, it reminds me of watching your favorite baseball team or basketball team that if you're a Democrat, they're losing all night. And you're like, God, this isn't going well. And all of your stars that you thought were going to win the game for you go down with a twisted ankle, a broken arm, you name it. All of the people that the Democrats attached their emotional heartstrings to for a year and a half all went down. But let me tell you something. At the end of the night, this is what the headline reads the next morning, and that is that your team wins. Because, Willie, the race, at the end of the day, that mattered the most were those races in the House, mattered the most to Donald Trump, mattered the most to Republicans on the Hill, because now they have the power to investigate, they have the power to subpoena, and most importantly, they actually are going to be able to return checks and balances to Washington. Because in the day, that the big headline is the end of one-party rule in Washington. That's the headline.
That was the journey for Democrats last night. The rock star caucus, not my term, Democrats call them the rock stars, Andrew Gillum, Beto O'Rourke, Stacey Abrams, they started to lose. They started to slip away. It felt like a bad night, but then you're right. Then those House seats, all the ones in Virginia, all the way across the country into California at the end of the night, flipping, turning, going the way of Democrats. And you know who the rock stars Democrats will be talking about today are Nancy Pelosi, Elijah Cummings, Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, because they will become January the chairs of the committees that will start pushing back on the president. And by the way, already last night, they've been on television. Jerry Nadler saying, we are here to put pressure on the president of the United States. Adam Schiff says, we are here to protect Bob Mueller in his investigation. It's coming for President Trump.
Well, and John Heilemann, you're going to hear spin from both sides, saying it was a push. Republicans win, Democrats win. And yes, Republicans outperformed what a lot of people expected in the reddest of red states. They still lost West Virginia. Montana is still close. But let's just strip it down to the bare essentials. Let's just count up the votes in these House races. And as of right now, and it looks like it's going to hold that way because we're on the West Coast now, Democrats will have outperformed in the House races in 2018, will have outperformed the Tea Party in 2010. That was supposed to be such a shocking tidal wave for Republicans. In 2010, Republicans won by 6.7 percentage points. Democrats, 8 years later, have won by 8 percentage points. And the difference between the 63 gained and the 28 gained, gerrymandering, and even that got taken care of in a lot of big states last night with Democrats winning governorships.
Yeah, it's, look, I mean, you made the correct point. It is the case that Donald Trump has had a very short political career. It's been less than 2 years. But in his, it feels like a lot longer.
Yeah,
like an eternity. But in that period of time, he has operated without any effective restraint on his agenda, other than, you know, the courts occasionally. But in terms of the way that the national government works, he's had Republicans in the Senate, Republicans in the House. Now, for the first time in January in his political career, he will have an effective opposition party that will be able to thwart his agenda. Will be able to stand in opposition to anything he tries to get done on the domestic front, on the regulatory front, and on foreign policy, even because of the way the House Democrats will be able to stand up to him. And the subpoena power is huge, not just for Donald Trump himself, but for every cabinet member. Anybody from Ryan Zinke to Wilbur Ross.
If you're Zinke, you're nervous this morning. If you're Ross, you're nervous this morning. The only reason that they are still in office is because Republicans abrogated their constitutional responsibility. There were no checks and balances. That is over.
The message to every Trump cabinet secretary this morning is lawyer up, and that's starting in January. That's what's going to be happening, and it's a huge tectonic shift. There's a lot of other caveats to that. We'll talk about them all morning, but that is the headline,
that's the bottom line,
and that is the biggest story of the night.
And Mike Barnicle, let's just be definitive on what's today.
Let's call it the 7th.
7th of November.
Let's just be definitive on November 7th, 2018. Trump 1.0. The Donald Trump we saw for the first 2 years of his presidency, that is over. That is done. That approach is buried. Because if he continues to go that way, he will never pass another piece of legislation on Capitol Hill. He will be stopped dead in his tracks, now and forevermore, unless he changes. And we all, of course, don't think he's capable of changing. So it's going to be a bleak 2 years for Donald Trump if he thinks he can continue to operate the way he has in 17 and 18.
I would bet you, knowing what we know about Donald Trump and what we know about his presidency thus far, that he is unfazed by the results of the Democrats winning the House, that he looks forward to a continued fight. That's who he is. He's a brawler. He's going to get up every day and fight someone. But one of the more interesting aspects of last night's results was the Trump victories, and they are Trump victories, bringing specific people into the United States Senate, defeating a couple of major all-stars, as you indicated, for governor, Democrats who lost, is the demographics of last night. Trump's Republican Party is getting increasingly older, increasingly whiter, increasingly rural. In other words, almost getting close to life support.
They got wiped out. They got wiped out in the suburbs. Now, that is, I became a Republican growing up in the suburbs in, middle America, little post mid-century. That's where the Republican Party's new majority came in the 70s and 80s and 90s.
Well, that's gone now, Joe. It's gone. And just in the clip that we showed coming in, if you take a photograph, a family photograph of the Democratic Party today, included the winners of last night's congressional seats, many of them women, that's the photograph of America today. And that's a much more encouraging photograph to look at if you're a Democrat.
So, Casey, can we give a word of warning to bloggers on the left this morning?
Sure.
Because one of the dumbest things I have been reading about the last couple of months, because things aren't breaking their way in the fourth and the fifth inning, let's abolish the Senate. There can be no real checks and balances until we abolish the Senate, man. Let me tell you something. When they stop smoking their weed, or when they get out of their
But they can smoke it legally in Michigan now.
Not that there's anything wrong with that for you. But for my children,
there's a lot wrong with
my children, there's a lot wrong with it.
John's a lost cause.
He is a lost cause. But it's such a critical point, and it's what I say all the time. There's always an ebb and flow in American politics. There's always the checks and balances. And guess what? This year it was Democrats on the defensive. But anybody, after they put down their bag of Cheetos, if they look at the 2020 map, it is brutal in the Senate for Republicans. In fact, the Republicans are going to be facing as much of an uphill fight 2 years from now as Democrats faced last night.
That's the bottom line.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely true, Joe. And you mentioned the rock stars at the top who lost, Beto O'Rourke, Stacey Abrams. Democrats are going to try to run for president in that same mold. I think the lesson, and this is going to be a real fight in the party, is that where Democrats won last night was across the heartland in pragmatic places with candidates who ran fitting their communities as moderates. The governor of Michigan, for example, a lot of those House seats in those suburbs, and that is still their path back to the presidency. I think that is going to be a huge battle
Casey,
in the Democratic Party.
Did you notice the athletes, as Brother Buchanan would say, he talked about political athletes. Did you notice those women who were winning?
Yes.
They served the country. They were in the heart of their community. I mean, the people that won, everyone that came up there, either the recruitment or the people that decided to jump in themselves. You know what? Political athletes won. There's a reason why Joe Manchin won in a state that, Trump carried by over 40 points? Why?
The most Trump-supporting state in the nation.
Yeah.
Yes, and women, let's please not forget, a historic number, over 100 women in the U.S. Congress for the first time in history. And that is because of Donald Trump.
That is the Trump effect.
Women are so fed up, and they realize ultimately that they have to step up and do things for themselves. No one's going to do it for them, especially in the case of Trump. And in fact, they did this time around. Let's get to the exit polls. And okay, quick, Mike.
I would submit Beto O'Rourke did not lose last night.
Well, I get that.
A lot of people
talk about that more.
Now, Mike, that doesn't seem like you. You don't seem like everybody that competes gets a trophy kind of guy.
No, I know.
If you strike out, you're out.
He's the Nathan Eovaldi of politics.
But he's still not the Ted Cruz killer.
No, he's
Being
not.
the Ted Cruz killer would have been would have gone a long way.
Of course,
All right,
we're
defeater.
not talking
Okay,
literally.
as
Just
predicted.
politically.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.